Parenting requires so much awareness.
Parents, they try to communicate with their teens, but parents feel shut out.
I'm wearing something. You'd say to me, are you really going to go outside with that? You're like, you used to like me so much. I would walk into a room and you'd light up and you wanted to do things with me. And now I walk into a room and you walk out. You know, behavior is a form of communication. And our children can't always verbalize to us what they need. But when they act out, will be very verbally aggressive. You're just like, where is this coming from?
Hi, Dr. Liz. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's truly a pleasure to have you with us on the show. So how are you today?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we dive in, could you introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a bit about your work and what drives your passion to work with children, teens, and parents? It's truly incredible.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Dr. Liz Nissim. I'm a clinical and school psychologist. I've been in private practice for the last almost 13 years full time. Before that, I was part-time in the practice and I worked in schools, private schools, as well as public schools as a school psychologist. So I've been a member of the child study team. But then in 2012, I was pregnant with my third child and just kind of realized I needed a lot more flexibility than what was going to be offered to me in a school. I also wanted to be able to do more. So the full-time private practice became a thing, and I've been doing it ever since. I started as a solo and then ultimately built a team around me of 6 therapists who also, we all work with specific age ranges. And so together as a team, we cover really the full age range across children, adolescents, young adults, families. So it's really wonderful. What drives me is just being able to make a difference and helping people to feel better about themselves or to function better, to be more confident. That's really what drives me.
You have a wide spectrum of functionalities.
We do. It's not mine alone, but it is all of ours as a team.
There's a range of specialists there. So if you don't mind, how old are your children? Like how big are they? Are they teenagers or just approaching teens?
I have an 18-year-old who's in college. I have a 16-year-old who's a sophomore in high school, and I have a 12-year-old who's in 6th grade in middle school.
You're quite experienced personally too.
I'm living the dream just like every other parent is.
I have a teen daughter.
Right. So you understand. Adolescence is a very difficult time to parent. It requires a lot of learning how to keep the thoughts inside the head.
We just think suddenly what happened? What my docile, loving child, what happened to her?
Now they have a big voice with big opinions and we have to hear them. But it's all good.
See, nowadays, mental health is becoming a major concern for teens. So, in your experience, what's the biggest challenge that you see that teens and parents they are struggling with? And is there a way that parents can recognize early signs of mental health struggles between among teens and their kids?
Anxiety is really big right now and has been since. It was big before the pandemic, but since the pandemic, it's been a really big issue. I think with the shutdown and being isolated, it really interfered with children's social skills and building the ability to interact with others, engage in group activities and that sort of thing. And that isolation really took away those skills, and we've had to work really hard to rebuild the connections because, as you know, as we all lived during that awful time of some people were okay with getting together, others were not. And that separation really brought a lot of friendships to an end. And it kept it for kids who were social, it isolated them. For kids who were anxious, it reinforced the anxiety because they were isolated and there was no opportunity to go anywhere. And kids felt very safe at home. And then they felt too safe at home. And then they didn't want to leave home. And they didn't want to get out into schools or to re-engage in activities. I remember very much that it was very hard for my own children as well as a lot of other children that we were working with to re-engage in activities. Like I just know like my kids lost interest in things, and a lot of kids lost interest in things that they were doing just because they didn't do it. And they're like, well, I don't need to do this anymore. It's not that important. I don't really enjoy it. Right. That hiatus created, I think, a lot of negative impact on our kids, and we're still seeing the impact of it. And we're not even looking at the academic implications that happened during that time as well.
There are many parents, like you are a teenage mother. Many parents, they feel lost when it comes to setting boundaries for their teens. Like, what's the right balance between the discipline and allowing independence? They are trying to assert themselves and they test our boundaries and they want to go too far. So, where do we set that right boundary?
Well, that's a loaded question with not a very definitive answer. I'm sorry to tell you, because it really depends on your child. And like I have three children, and each of my children, I really need to parent very differently. So what works for one does not work for the other, and I think when it comes to setting up those boundaries, it's really understanding what drives your child. I have a very spirited middle child. She's been spirited from the minute she left my womb. She was spirited while she was in my womb. So, she's a child who really wants to do more. So I have to temper what like I did was not okay for my first. It's not necessarily the same path that we're going to follow with my second. And my third is another very different child. And so those boundaries come from what does your child need and understanding where they are developmentally, because that's another piece. So you're looking at temperament and you're looking at developmentally where they are, which parts of the independence are appropriate, and then taking into consideration what is your child really capable of, right? So things that I let my first child do, didn't let my second child do, but let my third child do. And it's like, it's all over the place. So the end, right. And let's not joke around. Our parenting, how we were parented, what we came into the parenting arena with also impacts our parenting and recognizing and our desire to, like, if certain parts of our childhood were great, what do we want to continue with? If they weren't, then what do we want to change? Parenting requires so much awareness, self-awareness. How am I feeling when my child is having a meltdown? How am I feeling when my child is anxious? I'm an anxious parent, I'm an anxious person, right? So a lot of my children's struggles have created so much anxiety for me, and I had to have a lot of self-awareness and then begin to create boundaries between myself and my children, understanding that their struggles are not necessarily mine to take on, but for me to really coach them and mentor them to help them get through it, as opposed to fixing it for them, right? There's so many different dimensions to parenting, and it's one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. And one of the most incredible jobs I've ever had. And, I think that, I came into it having, and maybe you did too, we kind of saw our parents as they knew what they were doing. They were always right. And then I have three kids who are like, you're not right. Right.
It's changed.
Right. It's changed. We've allowed our kids to have a lot more opinions than our parents permitted us to. We want to hear what they're thinking. And so we created this forum, and now they tell us what they're thinking all the time.
True. So there's one more challenge, like parents, they try to communicate with their teens, especially teens. But most of the times, the parents feel shut out. So is there something that parents can do when they feel like shut out from the lives of their kids? Anything they can do to just
Absolutely
create that rapport again?
So adolescence is a time, and I'm not going to remember the exact name. I just know that it's a developmental milestone for our teenagers. When they're younger and before they get to that space, they're very much reliant on us. They're more dependent. Because when they were pre-verbal, we were able to anticipate what they needed, right? So they kind of figured my mom just knows what I need and she just does it, right? And over time, they go into this next developmental task where they need to separate from us. They need to separate and individuate themselves from us. And so that also happened at an earlier time in toddlerhood, when we all, we're like the toddler twos and threes and fours and whatever, when our children they wanted to separate from us a little bit, but not too much. And if, we liken it to when toddlers are on a playground, right? And your mom is sitting or dad is sitting on a bench, and they come over and they're like, "Hi, mom." Right. And then they run back. They just want to make sure you're there. Right. I know you're there, but I just want to make sure, and I'm separating from you. I'm doing my own thing, but I want to come back and make sure you're here. Adolescence is a very similar process, but now there's a lot more emotion and verbal capability. Right. There's the hormones that are raging, which are such a joy. And so they want to separate from us so badly to become their own individual people. So they have to reject us. And in that rejection, right, parents feel hurt because we're humans. You're like, you used to like me so much. I would walk into a room and you'd light up and you wanted to do things with me. And now I walk into a room and you walk out. I say something, you roll your eyes. I'm wearing something, you say to me, are you really going to go outside with that? Right? You're going to leave the house looking like that? So it's such a time of rejection of parents, but they're rejecting us in a way that, we can't personalize it, because underneath it, they still want our attention and validation and approval, but they want to be able to dictate when they speak with us. They want to dictate when they do their own things. They spend a lot of time in their room, separating from us, physically separating from us. So what I do, as well as encourage a lot of parents to do, is you just keep inviting. Just keep inviting. Hey, do you want to sit down and have lunch with me? Hey, do you want to go grab lunch? Can we make dinner tonight? And it's not assumed anymore. Whereas like my children, up until they were preteens, they were like right there. They were right there by my side all the time. And now it's like, I'll call my daughter upstairs. Can you come downstairs and have dinner with me? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay, I'll just sit down here by myself. It's okay. Right. But it's a lot of inviting. It's a lot of inviting, for my kids as well as other teens. It's, let me invite you, do you want to talk about this? I noticed you're upset about this. I hear this a lot from my kids. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And so you invite, right? But it's they're taking control over when they're going to talk about what they want to talk about. And you just invite and you say, okay, well, I'm here. When you're ready to talk, I'm happy to listen. And you just keep inviting and you keep inviting and you keep inviting. It is a true testament to patience and consistency and continuity and continuing to do that, because it is constant rejection. And for that anxious parent or that people-pleasing parent, this is hard.
Yes. So the key is,
so that's my question. Keep inviting. Keep
trying.
Inviting. Yep, keep inviting. And now think about it as, if you had a friend who didn't live in your house, how would you see your friend? I would invite them to lunch. I would invite them to dinner. I would invite them to bake cookies. I would invite them to get maybe manicures or pedicures together, go take a walk or go to the mall, right? And engaging them in their interests. Let's listen to the music you like to listen to. Play that song for me. What's it about?
So it's a lot of effort on part of parents also. Don't take it personally. It's a phase.
Yeah, it's a phase. Every part of our children's development is a phase, and they pass, and then you look back and go, oh yeah, remember when it was really hard to talk to my kid? And now, like, my oldest is in college, and we try to catch up either on FaceTime or by phone every single day, and he reaches out to me. So it's a phase. It's the next phase.
Actually, I know about a teenage boy. He's kind of 15-year-old. And his mother, she said something about cleaning hands. The boy did not wash his hands after going to the toilet. And then he had something, he didn't care. Then the mother sat him down. She told him that it's not good. Things get stuck in your hands and it spreads infection. And something shifted in his head. And since then, he has become paranoid. He's cleaning his hands like million times and he's checking, and he has lost his sleep, and he started getting so anxious that it has affected his studies. And sometimes parents think like, I just told him what happened. This is important. I just gave him some instructions. What happened to that kid? He is like, his grades are falling. Parents don't know what to do. it was just a simple statement to educate him about personal hygiene. Do you have any idea what happened?
Well, that's a tough one because, did he have pre-existing anxiety, or concerns about, I mean, he didn't wash his hands, right? But sometimes as parents, we really have to temper how we give the message because scare tactics work for one kid and not another, right? It can go in that opposite extreme of now he's obsessed with cleaning his hands because of what could potentially be in his hands and then get into his system, right? So I think going back and kind of trying to reverse the message, but if it really is so ingrained and is now taking over this child's life, I think it's time to seek, psychiatric consultation for possible medication to ease the anxiety while working on, exposure and response prevention type treatment for what sounds like OCD at this point.
Okay. Dr. Liz, you specialize in areas like anxiety, ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, and learning difficulties. Many parents, like this parent also, they struggle to identify when their child's challenges are just a part of growing up or what they should look up and when they need professional help. So, what are some early signs that parents should look out for? And then,
So so to me, for any diagnosis across the board, when the symptoms interfere with a person or child's ability to function and functioning in the major areas of school, um, activities, friendships, hygiene, daily routines, when the symptoms interfere with the ability to function in one or more of those areas, that's when it's time to seek out professional help. And it's problematic. That's when it becomes a challenge that is now getting in the way of the child being able to do other things.
does the parent does not know if it is ADHD or it is this. So if it's interfering with his normal functioning of life, that is a cause of alarm. Then they should seek help.
Yeah, if it's interfering with a child's ability to eat or sleep or go to school or participate in school or form friendships, maintain friendships, those kinds of things. That's when the alarm should be going off in a parent's head.
Anxiety is nowadays it's a common issue among teens, college admission, school. So is there some strategy that both teens and parents they can use to manage this anxiety? Like my daughter, she has frequent headaches now because she had portfolio, then she had exams, then she had so many things going on. Then is this like do I there's a definite difficulty to understand, is this, she doesn't brand it as anxiety, but I can see she loses sleep when the college result comes, she loses sleep, then she has headache. So is there something as parents that we can do to ease that difficult part for the teens, or something they can do to ease out, or just so that this phase of admission or this phase of their life where they feel it's tough can be eased out?
So, I mean, anxiety and feeling anxious is a part of our life, right? It's when it gets excessive that it interferes with functioning that we have to worry, right? So it's normal to have anxiety about college applications because it is a very important part of a phase of development and going on to that next phase of their life, right? But kind of, I think it's okay to sit down with your child and say, like, what are your expectations for this process? Like, how many colleges you've applied to? Is your expectation is you're going to get into every single one? You're going to have, an acceptance with some kind of scholarship. And it's okay to kind of help them understand what are your expectations, and let's find more realistic expectations. Let's be realistic with how many applications you're going to work on at a time, with the understanding of you have to temper your expectations of you're going to get into some schools and you're not going to get into some schools. And you may not get into the school that you want to, right? So, because those are this phase of development, I feel like then because our kids do go off to college and they're on their own, that everything up until then really then shapes that next phase of how they're going to handle disappointment, how they're going to handle a tough class, how they're going to handle a low grade, how they're going to handle not doing as well as they wanted to, right? And so continuing to have conversations with your children of all ages of sometimes you're going to win and sometimes you're going to lose. Sometimes you're going to get in and sometimes you're not. And the goal is never 100% acceptance with, full rides everywhere. That's not realistic. You have to give a chance to everyone else. And then finding ways to cope, whether it's, working on the thoughts. This is what I would do with someone therapeutically, working on identifying the thoughts and what feeds those thoughts and what the expectation is. And then also finding ways to manage the stress by engaging in some kind of activity or exercise, or if sleep is being interrupted, what kind of sleep routine can we put together to help improve sleep, because not sleeping increases stress and anxiety exponentially.
In your experience, when teens come to you, because you have been a school counselor also, when teens come to you, are there things that they are not comfortable telling your parents, but because of your specialization, they gradually open up and tell you?
Absolutely. But, that's part of the whole process of building a rapport, establishing trust, establishing a sense of safety, and then speaking of, and asking, and from my side, asking the questions that need to be asked, because a lot of teens will answer your question, but they will not volunteer the information. And that's another very subtle piece of working and raising teens, is they may not always volunteer the information. I have one child who would come in through the door and would just do a verbal vomit. It would just be telling me every excruciating detail. And then I have a child who's like, yeah, it's good. And then I have another child he will answer, but only to the question that I've asked. So understanding your child's communication pattern is really important, and understanding that they will shift during adolescence.
This is what most parents struggle with. They think like up to seventh grade, my child was great. He was listening to everything. And suddenly in 6 months, he has turned into this disobedient brat. Now he's not listening anything. He was so nice and so loving. Now he doesn't even want to talk to me. But here the phase is like parents also need to understand it's a phase. And in
It's
your
a phase, and don't take it personally. And the more you push that child, like, why aren't you spending time with me? We used to do all these things. The more you do that, the less that adolescent is going to want to spend time. I can't emphasize that enough. You have to give him the sense of control, right? It's a pseudo sense of control, but a sense of control nonetheless. To say, like, I would love to spend time with you. I really miss us getting together and doing things. Let me know, what would you like to do, and can we set up a time? But keeping the invitation open, right? As opposed to, why aren't you spending time with me? Because with teens, if you say left, they will go right. And that's the way it is. And I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to teens and said, what your parents is asking of you is right. Correct? You know this? Like, yeah, but I'm not going to do it because they asked me to. So if your parents didn't ask you, you would do it? Yeah. The only person you're really like hurting is yourself, right? Yeah. Got it.
This also I observed with my daughter. If she wants to, let's say she has a messy room and she has decided to clean it. Now, if I go and I tell her, clean this mess, she won't do it. Why did you have to tell this? I was actually going to do it. Now I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Very
It's
important.
a sense of, I want to do what they need that independence, right? They're separating from us. Really look at it as they're separating from us and creating their own identity. In that time, they become very rejecting of us and everything we say. And I've heard my daughter say the same thing. I was going to do that. Now that you said that, I'm not doing it. Okay.
Let's see, with your training, you know how to deal. For us, it's a struggle.
It's a struggle for every parent out there, because it is a change. And again, depending on your expectations, if you're expecting that you're going to tell your child to clean their room and they're going to just clean their room, if that's your expectation, it's going to create a battle. And that battle is going to impact the relationship, right? So instead, I would suggest saying, okay, once a week, I'd like your room cleaned. By Sunday at 12 o'clock, I'd like for you to have your room cleaned every week. I don't care what you do in the meantime, but by 12 o'clock on Sunday, I'd like to have your room cleaned. Do it on your own time, however you want it, whatever system you want. If you want help, I'm happy to help you, right? We're inviting. We're setting a boundary, but we're inviting.
And giving them a sense of independence also, because it's their call when they do in this 7 days time. Nice. That's a
Right.
great tip. So for parents who have teens with ADHD, like what are the best ways to support them in school and daily life?
Oh, that's a big question. Be a little bit more specific.
Let's give some tips. Because let's say I have a child who has ADHD. It gets difficult for the parent also. Like some emotional ways and some practical tools that parents can have, with which the life of the child as well as the parent becomes a bit smooth or easier.
My suggestion to every parent who has a child with ADHD and who struggles to get through routines is to create very consistent structure and routines in your home. I'm a very big fan of creating systems, right? So for younger kids, having a bucket by the door. So when they come in, they can drop everything in it. At the end of the night, they can put everything back in there. So in the morning, you have everything. Having a consistent sequence through which you get through your morning routine, having a consistent sequence for after school and before bed that your child can ultimately internalize, right? So it's not a new thing. Having visuals. Now, this is more appropriate, I think, for younger children and then approaching adolescence, right? And having a space for everything, right? This is where we put your backpack. This is where you put, right? At the end of the night, go get your stuff and like put it out there. You know, if your child doesn't want to set up clothing, just have an idea of what you want to wear tomorrow, but have your backpack in the same spot every night, charge your Chromebook at the same time. I'm a huge fan of setting alarms and just having spaces for things so that we're not losing our items.
So the
Because that's a
structure.
big one. The structure and the consistency is really important. And having a sequence, right? And having it written somewhere until that sequence becomes internalized. It doesn't have to be time-based, but the sequence is there. First, you come home, you can put your stuff down, take a 30-minute break, grab a snack. Maybe it's an electronic break, maybe it's a non-electronic break. And then at this time, we start our homework. And then after that, you can play and have your free time, or you have this activity on this night. Then we do dinner. After dinner, we do cleanup, or you can have some more free time. Then it's showering, getting ready for bed. And it's the same sequence every single night, right? The morning, after school, and bedtime. And then again, morning, after school, and bedtime.
That's nice. Now we know the teens and social media, it's kind of interrelated term. And social media, it plays a huge role in their lives. So how can
Mhm.
parents help their teens to develop a healthy relationship? Because nowadays, if we visit any house and if there are teenagers, then even the parents for that matter, they are stuck with technology. So is there
Technology is a part. The technology is there, right? And we have to embrace it as much as we do or don't want to. I think continuing to have conversations with our kids of like, what do you gain from it? You know, a lot of kids will say, "This is where I zone out," right? This is where I decompress. And then, having the conversation: are there other ways you can decompress? Because being on a screen is very overstimulating for our brains, and we're not meant to be in front of screens that long of a period of time. It really hurts our brain. So thinking about, yes, having your time to decompress on social media or wherever, but then also having time to decompress without the social media and the electronics. And really, again, it's creating that sense of choice and responsibility and accountability. Like, how do you feel after you've been on social media for that long? And a lot of teens will say, some will say to you, just because they need to prove you wrong, great, I feel great. All right. But then there has to be a balance with things that you are doing that are not on the phone or on the computer or the iPad, because we have to have that brain balance. For some people, they're going to say to you, every time I look, I see where my friends are or what other people are doing, and it makes me feel bad about myself. Right. And having conversations of, well, what would you like to do differently? And I'm a big fan of asking questions, not telling our teens, but asking them questions. So take what you want to say and turn it into a question. Right. So instead of saying, you should make more social plans, then turn it into, would you like to make more social plans?
idea? That's a great idea, actually.
Right. Because it then gives your child, your teenage child, the sense of this is their choice. But you've planted the seed. It's your idea. but then they take it and own it. And I can't tell you how many times as a psychologist, teens will come back. I've planted seeds through a lot of questions, and then they'll come back and say, well, I decided to do this. And I said, that's great. What made you decide? I don't know. I just thought of it. So that's great. That means I did it right. I planted the seed, made them think it was their own idea. Because again, if it's my idea, we're not going to do it. But if it's your idea, then it's a good one. So I want that. I want teens to own the idea, turn it into their own, because then they'll follow through on it, and they'll reap the benefit of it, thinking I came up with this. And it gives them a sense of self-efficacy and a sense of confidence, which is fantastic. And being aware as a parent that you're not going down the I told you so.
Yes.
Right? Because I told you so is a very big turnoff in your relationship with teens. It's not going to serve you well. Right? And sometimes I'll hear my own kids going, I know, you told me this. And I'm like, no, this is not a blame game. I'm not here to pass judgment. There's nothing to be gained from that. Let's look at the situation. Did it work out the way you wanted to? No. What would you do differently next time? How would you handle the situation again in the future? What would you do differently so that you got a different outcome?
Yes,
because that generates ideas.
I know. It's a punchline with teens. Even my daughter, she says it a million times. Even if she doesn't know, she'll say, I know.
And I like to capitalize on that. That's great that you know. So what do you think you'll do?
That's great. This is the next line. That's better. And you have done a lot of behavioral assessment also. Like when you do behavioral assessment, what are the things that you have in your mind, a list or something? Like how do you do that behavioral assessment of the teens? If let's say I send my daughter and you don't know her, you know nothing about her. So what steps do you actually take?
So when we talk about behavioral assessment, it's usually a parent saying to me, like, my child does this, right? Or a teen saying, I do this, and trying to understand what need it's satisfying, right? So if I hear from a parent, my child doesn't sit still, it could be ADHD, it could be the sensory thing, right? So give your child fidgets, have them sit on an alternate seat. So for me, it's taking a look at the underlying reason for the behavior. I don't look at behavior as just a behavior. I look at it as it's a form of communication. What is this child? What is my child? What is your child trying to tell us that he or she needs or wants or doesn't want and is trying to avoid? Is there a learning disability? Is there a central auditory processing issue? Sensory processing, anxiety? What is happening underneath that is creating this struggle? And then thinking about how do we satisfy that need, or how we eliminate something from the environment, or we add something to the environment to help with this particular area of struggle. So I don't look at it as we're going to punish that or we're going to reward it. It's where is the need?
Okay.
Behavior is a form of communication, and our children can't always verbalize to us what they need, but when they act out, right? So a lot of times teenagers will be very verbally aggressive, right? They'll say things that you're just like, where is this coming from? Right? Like, oh, who is this obnoxious person in front of my face right now? Right? It happens in those moments, as hard as it is as a parent, because your natural tendency is to raise your voice or start taking things away or punishing or whatever. Really, it's hard, is to stop and think, what's happening? What's happening? What's going on with my child? What is my child struggling with right now? And it's hard, but to stop and say, sounds like you're really struggling right now. You don't usually normally talk to me this way. Is there something going on that you want to talk about? And you disarm your child and you don't get into this battle. The minute you feel yourself getting into a battle with your teenager, you take a step back. But the minute you feel like you want to get into that battle with your teenager, because now you're like, how dare you speak to me that way? Right? It's so easy to get stuck in that because your teenager doesn't know how to verbalize, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling mad, or I really had a bad day, or I don't feel good about myself. I didn't make this team, or, a bunch of people are getting together and they didn't include me. Right. They may not come out and say that because it's embarrassing to them. And as their parent, you're like, it's not embarrassing. I want to hear what you're going through. But to just kind of, the minute you want to clash heads, is to stop and go, this is really unlike you. What's going on? Is there something that you're struggling with? Is there something you want to talk through? And it changes the dynamic. And now you may hear, a lot of times you'll hear, no, everything's fine. Okay, but I'm here. If you'd like to talk through anything, you're welcome to come to me, and I'm happy to talk.
And most of the teens, they complain that parents compare them to their childhood. I was not like this. In our childhood, we did not have this. We did not have that. And that is a major complaint that you did not have that. Now I have it. Is it like a problem that I have it? And there is a power tussle between the parent and the teen. Parent said, I had less means, I still achieved this much. You have so many means and still you are not able to do it. So, when the parent has that tendency to compare their childhood days with the current days of the present childhood, like the present teen, so at that time, like the teens,
Don't just don't compare your childhood to theirs. It's a world of difference. What we grew up with and what they're growing up with. We took a lot of the things we didn't have and we gave it to our children. And now we're saying, I gave you this. And they're looking at you going, yeah, you gave it to me voluntarily. Right? Don't do that. Don't compare. It's a non-point.
I had
If
so
you want your child to work on certain skills, work on those skills. No need for comparisons. It really doesn't accomplish much.
see, we see like resilience is the key for success. So, is there some way that teens can build emotional resilience to handle failures and setbacks? Because parents have a tendency of, like most of the parents, I won't say everyone, but majority of us, including me, we want to make the lives comfortable for our kids. We don't want them to do many tasks because if we can do it, we just try to like, okay, let me do it. I'll save your time. You can study in the meantime. But what happens in this? The child he gets develops a habit of not doing anything, and then later we get into a tendency of complaining. I keep doing everything for you, and now you're not doing anything. He says, "Oh, okay. If you can do it, why should I do it?" So
Correct?
where is that line that we should draw? Because we are creating adults of the future. And if
Mhm.
parents are trying to create the road and also walk for them, it creates a problem.
So let your children try out for the teams and not make them. And don't go talk to the coach. Let your child get a bad grade and have them figure out how are you going to talk to your teacher? Are you going to ask for a makeup? What are you going to do differently for the next test? You didn't make this team? I'm really sorry. That's really hard. But that's experiencing non-success, failure, and letting your child see, I lived through it. It stunk. It hurt, having a first heartbreak, having a second heartbreak, having a third heartbreak, and not trying to make it better. If your child has to study and you've asked them to take out the garbage, take out the garbage and then go study.
True.
Right? It sounds simple when I break it down that way, but as parents, we are trying to always catch them and not let them hit the ground. My thought is, let your kid hit the ground while they're still in your house, and you can be there to help support them, because what happens is we make their life so comfortable. Then they go to college, and somehow in our brains, we're thinking 18 is the magic number. Nothing changed between 17 and 18. Nothing changed between 18 and 3 months and 18 and 4 months. Nothing changes. The skills are the skills, right? So let your child in their senior year make their own doctor's appointments and go to their own doctor's appointment. Well, let them balance the multiple demands of college applications, social plans, sports and activities. And they might say to you, I have so much to do. Okay. Can you wash my laundry? No.
Do it
Well, when
yourself.
am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? Where do you think you can fit it in? Because, we're not washing our clothes by hand anymore.
Yeah, true.
You're
There's
throwing it in a washing machine and then you set a timer and come back and flip it. And then another machine dries your clothes. We're not putting anything on a clothesline and coming back and monitoring it, right? So it's okay. You can say, no, you can do your laundry. When your child's like, can you make me a sandwich? I think I'll make you a sandwich. Like, of course, I'm not saying don't do anything for your child, but I really encourage more of that independence. Well, I have a lot to do. Okay. So Figure out what time you're going to take out the garbage and when you're going to empty the dishwasher and when you're going to wash your laundry. Whatever task they've been assigned.
Manage your time.
Manage your time, because there it goes. That's where we learn all those skills.
True.
That's how, when we learn to be resourceful, that's when we problem solve and brainstorm. Because like you said, if we're doing it for our children, they go off to college and we're not brainstorming for them anymore.
Then they're
let them learn how to manage their time their senior year. Let them learn how to balance, doing your own laundry, changing your own sheets. I can't tell you how many college freshmen take off, and I'll work with them therapeutically or for executive functioning coaching. And they're like, I don't know how to change my sheets. And I'll share a YouTube video, and I'm like, okay, I'm on the camera right now with you. Let's go change your sheets. So I really have to encourage parents not to think that just because your child went to college, now all of a sudden they're going to know how to do the things. These skills have to be built. And like for my son's senior year, it was a big one. Like, especially when he turned 18 and he can go to doctor's appointments on his own, he went. And when he had follow-ups, he made the appointments. He told me when they were, so they're on my calendar, but he put them on his calendar. And he did his own laundry. And a lot of the things, like he needed to know how to change his sheets and make his bed and all these things that he needs to do. Think about how much our kids do when they go to college. All of a sudden, their schedule, they're not in school from 7:45 to 2:30, and they don't know what to do with the time. So a lot of times it's, well, you have a 3-hour break in the middle of the day here. Maybe you'll go to the library and get some work done, as opposed to going back to your room and watching Netflix for 3 hours. Right? Like I say to my son and a lot of college kids, do not go back to your room during breaks. Go find a space on campus where you can do your work and get it done.
That's much better. So what's the one life skill? You already listed many. If there is one life skill that every teen should develop before stepping into adulthood or college.
Oh,
So
there's no one skill. There's no one skill.
the multitude of skills.
Yeah. I mean, the things that we learn to manage as adults, it's not one thing, right? It's a buildup of all the skills. And I think it's really important from very early on that we do teach our children, as developmentally appropriate, different tasks that they can take on and feel good about themselves and feel like they're contributing to the family, right? They're contributing, like taking out the garbage, bringing in the mail, emptying the dishwasher, and doing these tasks consistently. Don't try to shield your child. Don't try to soften the blow. They don't have to win a trophy every time, because in life, not everybody gets a trophy. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So is there one major life skill? No, it can't be pinpointed like that. Not from my perspective, at least.
True. So while closing, what is the advice that you would give to parents and teens that could literally transform their relationship? Because this part is really hard.
Again, there's no one thing. There's never one thing. There's never like anyone who tells you, do this one thing and you'll be great. We all know that those are gimmicks. I don't do gimmicks. I think listen to your teens, listen, and sometimes teens just want to vent. And so it's okay to ask, do you just want me to listen, or do you want me to problem solve with you? Right? And letting your child tell you, I just need to vent and I need you to take my side. Right? And even as adults, sometimes you're like, I just need to vent and I need you to tell me I'm right. Even though I know I'm not right, I just need you to tell me I'm right.
That's what our friends are.
That's right. So listen to your teens. Ask them, do you want to vent or do you want to problem solve together? Don't ask a lot of questions. Engage, invite again and again, and you will be rejected again and again. Don't take it personally, because this is their phase where they are separating from us. They are building their own identity separate from us. And when they do break away from us, they want to be so different, right? Yeah. And then the trajectory eventually normalizes and gets back on par. And we start to see our kids really like picking up some of our views or perspectives or the way we do things or how we approach certain situations. But initially, there has to be that intense rejection. So understand that it's not rejecting you. This is part of their normal developmental task to separate from you.
So parents need to brace up until these teenage years are over.
Bring out your armor because it hurts.
So is it like by 20 they will again come back, or is it like 21, 22? What is that age?
I don't know. I can see, like, I think my daughter is going to come back maybe at 75, but my son, he's like slowly coming back, or like he's almost 19 at this point. So he's like, he'll look back and be like, I understand why you said that to me, and why you made me want to do this. And I used to get so angry when you would say this, but now I understand why you said that. And I was like, that's great. I didn't think I was ever going to hear those words, and then you have those moments where you're like,
so there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Absolutely. Be patient. Be patient. Sit and wait for your child. Ask questions. Be patient. Don't personalize. All of that. And it's a big task. They're going through their own stuff, and we're going through our own. We miss our child. We miss those times when our child sought us out and smiled when we walked into the room, as opposed to rolling their eyes because I was breathing or I unzipped my jacket.
Dr. Liz, thank you so much. But where can our viewers find more about you? Is there a website, some social media?
Yes. Yeah, I'm on social media. If you go to the website, which is psychedconsult.com, the name of the practice is Psychological and Educational Consulting in Livingston, New Jersey. And on the website is all our information for social media, email, lots of blogs. We post a lot with blogs, lots of information on there. But yeah, you can definitely find us on psychedconsult.com.
Thank you so much. Your expertise in mental health and education is incredibly valuable, and the insights you have shared, they will help me, and I'm 100% sure they will help all the parents and teens out there. We truly appreciate your time and the important work you do. You're quite organized and very, very, like, you have all the steps listed out. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
For those watching, if you found this discussion helpful, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful conversations. Thank you so much, Dr. Liz, for being with us.
Thank you.
Bye.